The sack of Shamakhi took place in 1721, when rebellious Sunni Lezgins from within the Safavid Empire, which by then was already in a state of heavy decline, attacked Shamakhi, the capital of the Shirvan province. During the reign of King Sultan Hussein, it resulted in the sack and looting of the city, the massacre of thousands of the Shia inhabitants of Shamakhi, as well as the robbing of the property of its Christian inhabitants and foreign nationals, of which the latter were mostly the many Russian merchants. Several Russian merchants were killed as well by the rebels. The harm done to the Russians in Shamakhi by the rebels was shortly afterwards used by Imperial Russia, then under the reign of Peter the Great, as one of the pretexts to launch the Russo-Persian War of 1722 to 1723. Background and attack. By the course of the 1710s, the once prosperous Safavid realm was in a state of heavy decline, with insurrections in numerous parts of its domains. Then incumbent King Sultan Hussein was a weak ruler, and although his personal inclinations were more humane, less rigid, and relaxed than those of his chief mullah, he followed the line of his chief advisors in the eventual decisions. He reigned as a stationary monarch, and aside from the occasional hunting parties, he preferred to be inside or near the capital of Isfahan at all times, invisible to all but the most intimate of courtiers. Having seen not much more of the world other than the harem walls, he had quickly fallen under the spell of the leading ulama, most notably that of Muhammad Baqir Majlesi, who had already gained his tremendous political power during the reign of Sultan Hussein's predecessor Sulayman I, instigated the persecutions directed towards Safavid Iran's Sunni and Sufi inhabitants, as well as its non-Muslim religious minorities, namely the Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians. Though the Christians, mainly represented by the Armenians, suffered less than other groups, they were also targeted from time to time. Even though Sultan Hussein, as Professor Roger Savory states, did not show personal hostilities towards Christians, he was persuaded by the clergy, who had an extremely high influence over him, and in particular by Majlesi, to issue unjust and intolerant decrees. The tense religious atmosphere in the late Safavid era would prove to be a significant factor in the revolts by the Sunni adherents from within the empire. As Professor Michael Axworthy notes, the clearest example was the revolt in Shirvan, where Sunni religious men had been killed, religious books destroyed, and Sunni mosques turned into stables. The Sunni population in the northwestern domains of the Safavids, comprising Shirvan and Dagestan, felt the burden of the Shia persecution during Sultan Hussein's reign. Daud Beg, a rebel mountaineer chieftain of the Lezgins, who had been imprisoned for a long time in the Safavid city of Derbent by the authorities, was released not long after the Afghan attack on Safavid Iran from within its far easternmost domains. Hoping that Daud Beg and his Dagestani allies would assist with the revolt on the eastern front, Daud, instead, put himself at the head of a tribal coalition, and subsequently launched a campaign against the Safavid government's forces as well as the Shia population of the empire, eventually marching upon the city of Shamakhi. Shortly before the sack, the Sunnis of the Shirvan province appealed to the Ottomans, their co-religionists, and the arch-rival of the Safavids, the Lezgin coalition, subsequently having mobilized some 15,000 tribesmen, laying siege to Shamakhi on the 15th of August 1721. Eventually, the Sunni inhabitants of Shamakhi opened one of the gates of the city. Thousands of its Shia population were massacred, while its Christian inhabitants and foreigners were, mainly, only robbed. Several Russian merchants were killed as well. The stores of the many Russian merchants were looted, which resulted in grave economic losses for them. Amongst them, Matvey Evrenov, reputedly the wealthiest merchants in Russia, suffered huge losses. The Shia Safavid governor of the city, his nephew, and the rest of his relatives were cut to pieces by the mob, and their bodies thrown to the dogs, with Shirvan subsequently completely overrun by the rebels. The Lezgins afterwards appealed to the Ottoman Sultan for protection, which he granted, and one of the rebel leaders, the same Dorbeg, designated by the Sultan, came to be the Ottoman governor of Shirvan. Aftermath. Artemy Vilinsky, Russia's ambassador to Safavid Iran, reported on the great damage done to the Russian merchants to then-incumbent Tsar Peter the Great. The report stipulated that the 1721 event was a clear violation of the 1717 Russo-Iranian trade treaty, by which the latter guaranteed to ensure the protection of Russian nationals within the Safavid domains. With Safavid Iran in chaos, and the Safavid ruler in no possible way able to safeguard the provisions of the treaty, Vilinsky urged Peter to take advantage of the situation, and to invade Iran, on the pretext of restoring order as an ally of the Safavid king. Indeed, Russia shortly after used the attack on its merchants in Shamakhi as one of the pretexts to launch the Russo-Persian War of 1722 to 1723.